Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy early start to Taco Thursday, baby. It's Taco Thursday, and there's plenty to talk about today, actually. Speaking of, no pun intended right there, but more importantly, higher term time frame switching around now based off the way that Bitcoin did close the daily yesterday. Yesterday's focus of the video was essentially, hey, Bitcoin does not continue from here, basically in this next 24 to maybe 48 hour period. We're very likely to see a bit of a more sizable pullback down to the low $28,000 territory. So that's kind of where I want to pick up on today. Of course, lower term timeframes actually going to show a bit of a different picture there. There is a bit of a setup actually going on as well. But other than that, I want to once again give the spotlight to the Bybit promotion going on because they got 0% on maker fees for derivative contract orders, and you can get the Jewel Light for free for the first 30 days if you follow the directions in the link in the description below. And don't forget to herp and derp and tap the derp and whatever the fuck else. Anyways, let's just jump right into it right here. So yesterday, big focus on sort of the timing aspect as to what Bitcoin was going to do in the last 24-hour period. Again, maybe 48-hour period, as essentially if we were going to see continuation, that's very likely the time frame that was going to come in around. And of course, yesterday we did have a setup as well. There was a bit of a higher probability of an upside move. However, that obviously did not happen, and validations were hit, and then validations for lower downside moves were obviously spun upon after that to the low $28,000 territory, which is kind of where we're at right now. Anyways, the reason why this does start to change around the picture on the higher term timeframes is, well, manyfold. We can see over here on the 2-day time frame, which is actually closing tonight for CME, that regular bearish divergence of the two drives variety will be confirmed with any sort of a closure, especially below 29,000. But I'd even say 29,300, and that will be active again alongside very, 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 very low volatility right here. Now, this is not, in my opinion, mature enough to spin upon another major signal just yet, but obviously, this can stay down here for a little bit of time, and then, well, the longer that it stays down here, the more and more inevitable that it will be that it will expand. And then, of course, as of right now, all momentum also is pointed to the downside, so that would favor the downside as far as that setup goes, but still a little bit further away. Anyways, daily time frame, same shit as well. I believe we spoke about this yesterday. 1, 2, 3, 4 drives of bearish divergence come off the last high, and in the 12-hour time frame, I believe had about the same thing. Yeah, and the daily Jewel actually got this one pretty damn well right here as well, firing off a setup on the 18th, was that? Yeah, the 18th right there. Before this last downside move. Anyways, moving into the next few things. I did want to also go into what essentially would be reasonable targets based off of these divergences, assuming that they are confirmed. So in this case, the 2-day time frame. Well, in this case, usually the 21 exponential moving average, which is this yellow moving average right here, is going to be a natural area of interest, which is actually more than it's actually close to $2,000 lower than where we're currently at right now in the low 27s. So do keep that in mind. I believe that's also confluent if we go over here and draw a fib. Let me just bring back on my drawing tools. Yes, indeed, the 382 coming in right around that region as well. So on the greater picture, while Bitcoin can very easily pull back down to that level, maybe in the next week or whatever the fuck week, 2 weeks, something like that, we would not expect to see the 382 break on a closing basis if Bitcoin's going to obviously be picking it up from there and marching onwards and towards 32,000, as that would still actually be a relevant area of interest to the upside, depending upon where this kind of current pullback finds itself. Anyways, and of course, I'm going to offer up invalidations in a bit here, as there are other setups that are, counterweighting this, if you will, which can change the greater picture. But well, we'll get to that horse when we get to that horse, or we'll get to the forest or the bridge or whatever the fuck. Too many damn sayings, man. Anyways, into stochastic momentum, we can see that daily stochastic momentum, again, based off of yesterday's closure, below, I believe we were looking at 30,600 or so, remains to the downside. Current pivot actually went up based upon the last closure, now at 30,800 or so. So that is not a good sign for the short term as well. 12-hour time frame also going to be nosediving here. Momentum remains to the downside as long as Bitcoin's closing below 30,000 bucks, basically. 6-hour time frame also heavy down below 29,700. It should be denoted that it is starting to get into critical regions right here, but it can play around there for a little bit of time before we do get that inevitable pity bounce, if you will. Anyways, 4-hour time frame, same shit basically as a 6-hour pivot, however, much lower at 29,250. So do keep that one in mind, because when we come back to it in a second when we go over the actual setup in the lower term timeframes. That can actually lead into, well, that can lead into some a little bit greater. And the hourly time frame is actually going to be up here, but a little bit weak up, and will turn back down below 28,850. Bitcoin currently trading about $100 above that pivot right now. So, in the very, 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 very short term timeframes, is there a possibility for a bit of a bounce here? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we go over here to the 4-hour time frame on the HPDR indicators, the old herpaderp, we can see that it is playing off the bottom side of the current range lows. So, bouncing around here, completely fine in the short term. But referencing the daily, we can see very, 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 very clearly that if Bitcoin wants to take another leg down, still 28,100 to 28,200 is here to be mindful of before the next sort of bounce. I believe that's also one of the CME gaps coming in from, that's the gap coming in from Friday, the 7th of April, just a few weeks ago. Anyways, going back into it right here and going over to the next chart, I do want to now speak about a setup actually in the short-term timeframes. Somebody yesterday showing a bit of a higher probability of a short-term upside move from here. But just as yesterday, I always want to say when we talk about these setups, when we're looking at statistics ain't certainties. And while they have been working out incredibly well on this channel for months now, yesterday, you could see, did not work out. I mean, that's just part of the game. It is what it is. I always get questions after that. It's like, Krown, what do we do now that this one failed? It's like, it's just, that happens, man. Like, you have to take the good with the bad, when you get 10 ones, when you get 10 that work out in your favor, you should probably be expecting at least, 1 or 2 to fail relatively soon. And to be honest with you, I'm not so hot on this one myself right here, but there was a setup that did fire off. This was like early Wednesday. But still active right here. And of course, what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at the 2-hour HPDR indicator on CME. It's also on the hourly for regular spot, but I figured this one was just a little bit better. And in this case, we can see closures below the blue range lows right here. That initiates the next piece of criteria, which is referencing a decline in the volatility moving average on the BBWP indicator, which happens, I believe, right about here. Yeah, on that green vertical bar. So lovely. That does essentially, suggest that doesn't suggest that there's a setup. There is a setup right there, and we can go ahead and reference the strategy backtester for this particular setup, where basically, again, closures below the blue range lows while simultaneously experience a decline in volatility on the moving average of the BBWP. And these stats have been relevant over the past 140 trades, with about a 73.5% strike rate for, in this case, an upside move, a little bit of a bouncy bounce here. Again, these numbers are simulated on an account size of, actually, I don't know. 500,000 initial capital, order size 300,000. So not too crazy right there. But more importantly, you can see that if we go through the performance summary, the average winning trade printed about 3%, and I believe, the top end was about 4%. So, on average, if we're going to see this one win, we'd see about 3% from this region right here, which would put Bitcoin where? That would put Bitcoin, let me actually do it exactly properly. 3% puts Bitcoin where? Yeah, just above $30,000. That's very important, because above $30,000, you're very likely going to see all the stochastic momentum from the short and medium term timeframes start to turn up. And again, coming in from these kind of critically low levels right here, especially on the 6-hour and down, you can see that would start to have that sort of domino of effects with, putting in a nice low right here. And then we can start to talk about upside yet again. 32,000 to 32,500 would still be on the menu if that were to happen. But, this sort of a move we'd really expect to happen, like, no later than, I guess, end of Friday. I guess that's tomorrow, actually. So Friday, Saturday, basically. We kind of expect that to happen if it's going to happen. So that would be the trap scenario. A 73.5% strike rate is pretty damn good, at least in my book. But ultimately, it's not 100% strike rate. And we can also go and reference the average loss on this to get an area of interest for the downside. I'm guessing it's going to be around 4%, and actually it's about 3.5%. But that is very interesting right here, because, hey, get the fuck out of my face. Because that probably puts us at Oh, what do you fucking know? Puts us at 28,200. So, it does look to me that Bitcoin is quite likely to actually hit that level at some point. The question is, does Bitcoin bounce from there or close below there? If it closed below there, then this setup is essentially invalidated, and obviously the loss condition is hit. If Bitcoin bounces from there, essentially just doesn't close below there, then the potential for this for the short-term trap to the upside is still very much alive. So do keep that in mind. I'd even go as far to say that this will be invalidated, the upside at least, if you see closures below the current range lows, which is about 28,500 on a 2-hour time frame. See that? Not only is Bitcoin very likely going to go back to 28.1, 28.2, you probably see a small bounce there, not anything too crazy, and then probably lower into next week, playing out the divergences that we called out over here, especially on the 2-day time frame. This one starts to look a little bit more nasty, and that will at some point lead into a volatility versus stochastic momentum setup. I won't go over that today because it's not relevant yet. But you can kind of see the domino pieces in going in both ways. So right now, the higher term timeframes do favor the downside, to be quite clear. The lower term timeframes do say that there's a possibility for a bit of a short term bounce. The question is, can Bitcoin essentially reclaim $30,000 by, maybe Friday, but probably next couple days. Otherwise, downside is just generally more likely, with potentially all the way down to 27,000 or low 27,000 bucks, I should say. Basically what I'm trying to say, if Bitcoin does come down to 28.2 or 28.1, you're probably going to see a bounce there, but it probably will end up going lower into the next couple of weeks. All right, sweet. I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this particular video. I've been a lot more active on Twitter recently, actually. So if you're interested in such things, you can check it out over there. And cool. With that said, as always, wish you the best of best. Take care. Much love. And I'm going to finish my damn eggs. Until next time.